Hi, I'm Bill Carmody, and I'm the Marketing Whisperer. Today on my show, I have Nicole Heimann, who has just written How to Develop the Authentic Leader in You. This is a really amazing book about leadership and specifically targeting CEOs. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Glad to be here.
So, Nicole, one of the things that really jumped out at me in your book was that, there was a quote that you said something along the lines of CEO job descriptions should have warning labels on them because basically it can be hazardous to your health. If you don't have good sort of heart health and you don't have a good connection to your heart and your authenticity, and you sort of live through all of this stress, that there's a higher propensity of heart attacks and death. And I think it's such a fascinating concept because, as well as developing the authentic leader, one of the things that you really sort of stress is how you can actually bring your best self and your entire self to the job. And in doing that, it actually reduces some of the stress, and more importantly, it'll prolong your health. Is that right?
Yes, that's absolutely right. I believe the whole process of authenticity is a process of full integration, and that includes all dimensions, including taking leadership over our health and also taking care of that heart. It's often disconnected in business, and no wonder there are so many heart attacks.
Well, and one of the things that you spend careful attention to do is to talk about sort of the seven dimensions of authentic leadership and leadership intelligence. So what I'm interested in is that as you were sort of looking into this book and writing this book, you really leaned on a lot of really intense research, and I loved a lot of the insights that you came up with. So how did you come up with the seven specific areas that authentic leaders and especially CEOs need to focus in on to bring their whole self to their job and their career?
Mhm. Um, the seven dimensions came actually as a um, I was I was often asked, how do you coach?
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, from the start of the build-up of my company, I have invested massive amounts of money in my own education and learnings, and so I have done an enormous wide range of trainings and coaching educations. And as I was sitting down and thinking, okay, how do I coach? I started to write down everything I integrate in the coaching. And then I saw the seven dimensions, starting with physical and ending up with consciousness intelligence, because that's how I coach, and I truly believe that the process of integration, of getting back to or connecting and integrating everything that is already there.
That's awesome. I mean, it I think one of the key important points that you make in the book is that just because you have a title doesn't make you a great leader. You know, you get promoted to whether it's an executive position or a CEO level, and just because you have the title, that by itself does not make you a great leader. You actually have to be working very specifically around how you bring your whole self into that position. And if the company is truly a reflection of the vision that the CEO comes through with, it's how does the CEO carry him or herself day in and day out, and then how is that reflected in the organization?
Yes, yeah. It's not the title. It's really the being quality of the CEO in who is he or she in the doing part.
Right.
Um, Inspirational or leading by force and by title, like I'm forcing because I'm the CEO and I'm telling you. Um, that's not very authentic.
Yes.
So so it's really, if we think of inspirational leaders, those are people who inspire and whom we want to follow and for whom we gladly work. So it's worthwhile questioning oneself, who am I and what's my impact on people, and am I the leader I would like to follow?
So let's go into the seven aspects of leadership. So you have seven dimensions that you specifically stock. You started with the physical. Why don't you run us through all seven dimensions and talk about some of the key points that you are really emphasizing within each one of those. So start with the seven, and then we'll drill down into a couple of them. Okay.
Okay. So the 7 dimensions are, well, first the physical dimension. Here it is about our body, not just taking care of the physical body, but also relating to our body and using like body scans for increased awareness. For instance, if we are in meetings, we can easily do a body scan and feel tension or pressure. It's all interpretations that can keep us out of stressful situations as well.
Sure.
So then we have emotional intelligence, a very large field. Here it's a lot of work with, for instance, values is a very important aspect here. Mm-hmm. Because we may have values, but do we live them?
Right.
And do they serve our vision, or are some values we think we have working against us? So this is a very important aspect to explore. Of course, not all. And also living one's values is a direct pathway to fulfillment and to happiness. Mm-hmm. So if we live against our own values because we might be sacrificing something for someone else or for something else, our energy gets depleted.
Sure.
So the third dimension is the first one. They are all equally valid. So let's take the pragmatic one. Pragmatic is the one I've chosen pragmatic instead of IQ. We have EQ and IQ. And the difference with IQ and pragmatic intelligence is that it combines IQ and experience.
Sure.
Because the experience part here plays a big role. This actually is the area where I need to coach leaders the least.
Okay.
Are usually very strong in pragmatic intelligence, and it's balancing out and integrating the other intelligence that brings this pragmatic intelligence on another level of quality. So very interesting to observe. Yes.
Well, and I think, when you start to get into the various different dimensions, you start to say, okay, well, there's the physical aspects that you need to focus on, and then there's the emotional aspects, and then there is the heart intelligence, the communications intelligence, then you just mentioned the pragmatic intelligence, and then you've got the neuroscience, and then you've got the consciousness, right? So when you have all these various different aspects, as a leader, it's how are you checking in on how you're bringing each aspect of that to your leadership position. And what I liked specifically was this idea that you're trying to make a major decision, right? You're stressing about it. It is keeping you up at night, and you've made no decision. And suddenly you realize that if you just listen to your heart, you could actually pull the intelligence out of your heart and be able to make a very informed decision, which is when you get out of your head, because basically people are processing the intelligence of that decision, and they're doing pros and cons, and they're cycling through, and you put it all on paper. But then when you take a moment and just stop, and you just close your eyes, and you think about sort of what it means that decision's going to mean for you emotionally, and what does it mean, and what is your heart telling you, oftentimes it'll just come right to you, right? And that's that idea of how do you actually use the intelligence in the rest of your body, not just in your head. So essentially people, are spending most of their careers leading from their head, when there's so much more that they could be doing in terms of bringing their full self to the position.
Absolutely, and it's one of the problems, because not all decisions from the head are the right ones. And often a coaching process starts with explaining that the body is more than just a way of transporting for the head. Because in corporate, everybody is in the head, and the disconnection from so many other parts is there. And the sad thing is that people started to do it as a protection. So they started to disconnect to protect themselves from all the games that are happening in a corporate world. So the irony is that the decisions that are taken are of a lesser quality than if people were to be able to work from their authentic beings.
And I think one of the other things that I loved about sort of how you're connecting is the idea that, you might have a really smart strategy and you may be in a position where you're trying to lead your teams and get them to embrace that strategy. But if they don't feel connected to you and if they don't feel authentically listened to and heard based on sort of what it is that their concerns are, then it doesn't matter how much intelligence you bring into the conversation. The example that I really loved is, you were in a conference and you were speaking to folks and no one was really there. They weren't checked in. And so you were seeing basically how the fact that because they weren't connected with you, you just stopped talking. And you stopped and you just didn't say anything. And after a few seconds, someone finally said, "Did you ask a question we didn't hear? Or did we miss something?" And you really said, "No, listen, I know that you're not here with me. You're not hearing me." And so you actually took them out on a walk for 30 minutes and got them to reconnect with nature, and then did a Zen Buddhist meditation to sort of get them connected. But the beauty of that story and that example was that, you were authentically listening to your audience even as you were speaking. And in doing that, you knew that your message wasn't landing. And you knew further that, just to plow ahead was going to be a waste of everybody's time. So instead, by going back there and connecting, your heart was telling you information that your head would basically not necessarily pick up on. And it was saying, "Look, I know I'm not connected right now. I need to do something about that." And you took action and you did it.
Yes. Yes, that's my style. Yeah, no, it was an amazing experience, and I'll never forget that moment because they really looked empty. I had bodies in the room, and people were not present. And they also, I think I wrote it. They said, "Nicole, we are tired. They have been going through major reorganizations, and all of them were working hard. They were working many hours. So, and they were just functioning. And even in a 3-day seminar, they were not present."
Right.
So it's, yeah. And after the meditation, which was very new to them, the next day they asked, when they came into the room, they said, "Nicole, can we meditate again?"
That's great.
So that experience for them to feel themselves again, to be back in touch with self, was like very healing. And then we could authentically connect in the seminar.
So, Nicole, why did you write this book? You have a vision for what you want. What happens here if you reach the right people? What happens with this book getting to the right hands of the right CEOs?
Yeah. So my vision is to coach CEOs who into their full authenticity, so that through coaching only the CEO, we can transform a whole organization. Because I truly believe that when a CEO is visionary and courageous to fully step into his authenticity, the organization can follow. And a lot of energy will set free, and a new quality of being with each other will start to form and be shaped. And from all the work I've done in many corporations, there is in most of the organizations an environment that people do not like to work in, an environment that is draining in energy. Everybody plays the politics. Everybody says they don't like it.
And it continues.
And the thing is that they all create their own reality, because It is created by the people who are there. And I believe that only the CEO, when he starts role modeling authenticity, then he's giving permission to everybody else to follow. I don't believe that small workshops with teams here and there are effective as long as the investment in the CEO is not happening. Well, so that's my dream, that's my vision, to help transform organizations through working with CEOs who are visionary and believe in authentic leadership.
So transform the leaders who are leading the organization, and the idea there being that they can then lead by example and ultimately sort of get the connections to the rest of their team and their staff, so that essentially they are able to transform the world based on the company or the vision that they've set out to do in the first place. That's great. Well, Nicole, the other thing that I'm really interested in too is that, I look at this and I go back to an earlier statement that I made that you had referenced in the book, which was when you look at how people become leaders, most oftentimes they are thrust into these positions, and the Dilbert principle. Scott Adams, used to joke about the fact that you get promoted to your level of incompetence. You'll keep getting promoted until you stink at the place that you've been promoted to, and then you just get stuck there, right? And so essentially, whether that's the CEO position or whether that's somewhere else within the organization, authentic leadership is not about your title. Authentic leadership is not about sort of being who you think you must be. In other words, the mask that often people put on to say, well, now that I'm the CEO, I got to act a certain way. Or now that I'm the chief marketing officer, now I got to act a certain way. It is really, truly being your whole self and bringing everything into the position, which means, if you like to joke around and you're humorous, you find the appropriate ways to inject humor into your position. If you have a passion for sports, you find ways to bring that passion into the workplace, to say, whether it's analogies or just using that connection to the team. Everything that you do outside of the workplace has some level of role inside the workplace, and it's a matter of how you do it authentically to help make the connections that you need to drive your business forward. To me, that's beautiful, because that is really the thing that I think most leaders struggle with, is that they try to be something that they're not, as opposed to embrace who they truly are, and then lead from an authentic place of vision and not power based on hey, I've assumed power based on my title, but power based on sort of earned the right to lead.
Yes. That's, I couldn't say it any better than you just said it.
Well, obviously I love the book. I mean, I think I'll tell you something else for the audience there who's thinking about this book. The thing that I really like the most is that you did a lot of homework. This isn't just your opinions. A lot of people, when they write books, they basically come out there and they say, hey, I think this, I think that. What you did is you took the time to look at this from a scientific perspective. I think one of the things that really blew my mind was when you're talking about heart intelligence. And science has shown that basically the cellular level has memory. And that's something that it's coming up in more and more often. The more books I read, the more I keep hearing this theme. But what I'd never heard until I read your book was this idea that heart transplants, right? That somebody actually gets somebody else's heart and they inherit memories. And that to me blows my mind. The fact that there's been scientific proof and documentation about people who've received somebody else's heart and actually are, reliving either pain points or trauma or other things like that. I mean, in one of the examples you used, they have actually solved a murder. It's like incredible that the person who was murdered had that sort of heart memory, and then that sort of came on the subconscious mind. Now, again, I don't want to scare people off because this is not a mystic book. This is really truly about leadership, but it goes to show the point that you've done your homework, and you really talked about, when you talk about things like heart intelligence, there really is, it's not just a muscle memory, it's actual memory, that there's a real reason that you need to be listening, not just to your brain, but to your heart as you move forward in a leadership position.
The heart has neurons and memories.
Yes.
And first the intelligence starts in the heart, and then it goes to the brain. So there's so much research that is so fascinating. Also, our bowels have
yes.
memory. So we can also use these to store, use them as a storage. If our head is full, let it go down in the bowl. It's stored, it's not gone. No worries.
So it's just like my iPhone giving me that your cloud storage is too little. You need to expand your storage capacity. Well, your brain does the same thing, and it does it through stress. And so then basically you have to check in and say, why am I stressed out? Listen to the other storage places. Listen to the memories in your heart. Listen to your gut. Listen to the other organs that basically are telling you things that if you're willing to listen, you'll hear and be able to be a more authentic leader.
Yes. And then leadership becomes much richer because your sources of information become much wider. And with our mind, with the head, we can tell ourselves stories. We
Sure.
can let ourselves believe what we want to believe. But the information from the heart or from the organs or from the body, it doesn't lie. We can't trick it. We can't fool it. We can just receive it and then add it to what our mind is telling. So the scope, the basis becomes much larger and more intelligent.
Well, and to me, that was the other point that I really loved, is that the idea there being that, it's all there for the taking. This is more about learning to listen to your own feelings, your own body, what it is that your body's telling you in any situation. So things like conflict. How do you feel and how do you deal with conflict? Conflict's going to happen. It's a natural part of any business. In fact, if it doesn't happen, you're not growing, because you basically have a bunch of yes men and women around you, and they're just following exactly what you think blindly, whether or not they believe in it or not. And so it doesn't help you at all. But conflict can be a natural growth. It's how you deal with the conflict that makes you either a great leader or someone that people dread working with.
Absolutely. In conflict, there is a lot of creativity if you look for it.
Yes.
Right.
Excellent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, good. So, Nicole, How to Develop the Authentic Leader in You. This has just been a fantastic book. I think if you are looking at ways to develop your own leadership style, this is a very well written, very well researched piece of literature that will also help you put into daily practices the things that will make you a better leader. And so I think anyone who's looking to grow their leadership, not from a position of power and authority, but instead looking at it from a perspective of how can I be truly a great leader, you got to start with the understanding of the whole self, and not just how do you lead with your mind, but how do you lead with the other 7 dimensions of being an authentic leader. Nicole, I want to thank you for your time today. I really think it's a fantastic book, and I appreciate your insights. Thank you for being on the program.
Thanks a lot, Bill. It was a pleasure. Thanks. Thanks a lot.